flip the coin on you a little bit and say, represent, hey, you've been there, what'd you say, 15 months now, right?
No, I've only been here 9 months.
Oh, wow, 9 months.
January of this
9
year.
months. Mm-hmm. What do you see differently from going from realtor, broker, member, right, to mm-hmm. leadership in NAR? How do you view things mm-hmm. differently?
Well, I view things differently in the perspective that I see how the relationship is between staff and the committee members, the board of directors, how that works. I see it very differently. When I was a member, I didn't. And I admit, when I was a broker, I did not know about a huge resource that we have for brokers, which is our broker.realtor page of our website. I had no idea. And I felt like I was pretty engaged. So what I see now from the inside is where some of those gaps in communication are, and ways forward in how we can reach the members, because we need to be able to share this information.
All right. How does NVAR look at, so we're evolving, right? So actually, let me backpedal a second. I've been very loud through multiple episodes of this conversation, and you and I have had this conversation too, an advocate of education. Yes. This might actually cost us some of our own membership viewers here, Joe, but I'm an advocate for education, and you know this. Mm-hmm. And I look at, and I don't ultimately understand completely how NAR's places in some of this, right? Of setting the standard for renewals and education, and things have gotten much easier. And I think the barrier of entry to membership is almost actually too low. As director of training and member services, how do you view that? And what do you look forward to change in an awareness and education for its members?
So that's a two-parter for me. So the first part I will say is that there is another organization, Arello, that focuses on licensing law nationwide. And we do have representation and membership with Arello. We have partnerships, open lines of communication, if you will, on that. So I do see that licensing and continuing education piece evolving with feedback from all of Arello's partners or adjacent organizations. When it comes to education, there are learners and there are non-learners, right? There are members who want to learn on their own, not because it's required, but because they want to get better and they want to build the business. And then you have members who are fine with the status quo, right? They do however many deals a year they do it in the way that they do, or they have other avenues for education. What NAR has an opportunity with right now is communicating what's available for each of the different paths, for each of the different levels where a member might be. Because we talk about this all the time, it's really easy to teach new agents, right? Because the basics and the foundations are there. It's not as easy to bring a 20-year member back to relearn the basics so that they have their foundation really sealed. So we're looking at all of that right now to see how do we reach the member where they are and help them achieve their goal. And so we have a platform that is available for members to come straight to us. And we offer a plethora of included in your dues education and at an additional cost. It could be $10, it could be $300, right? But there is a wide range based on what their goal is. And we're also supporting the state and local associations and brokerages on bringing our programs to their members.
You think everybody should be a broker?
So when I think broker, I think the leader, and I think that not everyone wants to be a leader. It's not everyone's skill set to be the leader. I know there are many states that are broker states. And so everybody who is licensed in that state has a broker license. They still have to work underneath a supervising, responsible broker. But so that can get confusing to the public, I think.
Yeah, I guess my point was, again, it kind of just ties back to the education a little bit, right? Because I think that's a heightened level, right? I'm not just saying, hey, you're a broker, therefore you run your own office, whether it's yours or through somebody else. Mm-hmm. It's a heightened level of saying, hey, I'm a broker. So therefore, I theoretically have an increased level of understanding mm-hmm. of what's happening.
Right. And that brokers are just like agent members, right? Some want to learn and want to increase their knowledge of what's happening so that they can bring it back to their agents and they can do better in their own business. And then there are some that are okay with how things are. And so they don't go for the extra. And we have to reach them also where they are. And there's a saying that I quote all the time from someone we know, which is lead the willing, right? And we have opportunities for all, but all aren't going to jump on board with us. And that's okay. That's okay. We don't need to force them to. We need to provide for the ones that want it. We need to be able to communicate to the ones that don't know about that want it, right? So you hear all the time, oh, NAR doesn't offer whatever. They do. We just didn't communicate well to you. And so we need to do better at that.
So let me ask you more of a futuristic question. Given that what we used to know is kind of kaput, mm-hmm. and any type of industry gets disintermediated, disrupted, change happens because that's human nature as progress occurs. Mm-hmm. So all these changes happen, right, with lawsuits and DOJ and MLSs and boards and brokers and all that kind of stuff. And you have to say what got us here isn't what's going to get us to grow in the future or to have the same impact. Given that kind of landscape, what is NAR, its plan for the future? Like, what are the things that they're looking to build on or go to the future about what value is to members by being an NAR affiliate?
Well, the first thing is we are listening very carefully to the members. This is the members' organization. So when they come to us and say, or we hear somewhere else that they've said, right, what they're looking for, we are paying attention. Our CEO, Nakia Wright, recently was on another podcast, and she quoted that if you hear the whispers, or if you listen to the whispers, you don't have to hear the screams. So we're paying attention there with the members and their feedback. We're also working to articulate better what we have. And I said this earlier on, we have not told our story very well. So we are overcoming all of those changes and we're evolving. I will say part of the message that I have with the committees that I personally work with is that we need to focus on what actually changed. Not what might change, not what we feel like changed, what actually changed. Because in all of this, don't get me wrong, these are huge changes. There's not many. And if you break it down to what actually changed, and you can focus on how you pivot on what actually changed instead of the noise that's out there, it's not as overwhelming.
So let me ask you this question. What is the most common thread that is being whispered by members that you guys are like first line of priority to get accomplished or pushed forward for new?
So every department has a different focus. So I can only speak for my group.
Yeah.
But what I hear is that we don't offer anything, right? That's what we hear. I've paid all of this money to NAR and I haven't gotten anything, right? So my group is focused on communicating that. This is what we have, and if we don't have what you're looking for, tell us. The committees that we work with, every year the chair has a goal and they want to accomplish things during that year that fit in line with the purpose of the program. And we do that. We hear them, we implement. So every year we're seeing changes. And something that I would like personally to see increased is the adoption of the GRI program nationwide. West Virginia offer the GRI program, the Graduate Realtor Institute, but this is a several year long training that the states are facilitating that NAR assists with. And I think that would be a first really good step to elevate the level of education that the members have. Remember, we get members after they're already licensed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't determine what they're told coming in, why they got a license, what they thought was going to happen after they were licensed. We're here to help elevate them once they are licensed.
Gotcha. That's helpful. So communication of value seems to be the top priority for you.
Yes, just like I think it is for the members, right? The members, their top priority is to convey what their value is to their prospective clients. And if you look at it that way, the members are our clients when it comes to the fact that the staff is serving the members.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to communicate that better.
What is NAR's position, or how do they look at third-party companies? And I don't want to necessarily name one in particular here, but think of the big party in the room that we can all look at, essentially, that wants to make realtors irrelevant to a degree. That is now a brokerage in some states, if not all. Mm-hmm. They're part lead aggregator, kind of came in through the back door to a degree of helping agents. How does NAR look at itself and look at those types of partnerships and understand that the realtors need to remain central to the transaction in the process because they have the relationship? How does NAR look at that and either correct it or pivot from some of the current relationships that are in place?
So what I will say is that relationships with third parties, whether it be an online platform or a brokerage, right? It's not a formal relationship in such that NAR can dictate or put rules in place outside of membership rules that are there that everyone abides by. So what we do is concentrate on communicating to the member and to the consumer through the outreach what the value is of working with a member. It's ultimately the relationships that the agents have that's going to make the difference, right? If we need to continue to teach the members how to convey their value and empower them to convey their value and provide resources. So we have Facts.Realtor, which you hopefully have heard of, is a site that is being updated weekly, if not daily, with additional resources that members can take to their consumers to show the value, to show how the practice changes actually affect them. So we're providing these resources. Now, we can't go to every consumer, but we can provide the tools and empower the members to go to the consumer.
So I guess kind of where I was kind of going with that with a little degree, and there's one company in particular, but there's also the other resources that we used to have that were owned by NAR, but NAR has essentially sold off. And I'll use Realtor.com as an example there. That is now owned by a company that's not us. And to a lot of people, that they don't understand why that happened. And two, on the other side of it, when you're thinking Realtor.com, and if I'm a consumer, I look at it as like I am working with those people. So those are also some of the relationships that I think is the sting when we talk about representation and decisions that, again, pre-exist you, right?
Yes.
And other people. But that is also in the background. So there's a compounding effect of different things that have happened over time that I think impacts your story that you're trying to tell a little bit.
Absolutely, because Realtor.com licenses the Realtor name, right? So that is something that comes with rules. And the trademark department out of the legal side work on that, right? What we can do from my side is still communicating the value, still providing the education, explaining what that is. And I think that misunderstanding of any situation, right? If it's not corrected, then it becomes fact, right? It's that perception is reality piece. And relationships, when the trademark is being licensed, that's something that the member may or may not know that they could understand, right? Like they could learn about what that relationship looks like, but they see it. It's just like members using Realtor, right? Or saying they abide by the code of ethics, or, any of those things. There are standards that have to be upheld. And if they're not, then they're addressed.
All right. So as we kind of tend to wrap up here, Joe, what are your thoughts of where we're taking this?
I think it's kind of like a interesting conversation because there was such a need to use NAR due to contracts and local board affiliations with their access to MLSs. And what we're seeing is that a lot of agents, from a engagement awareness, is that they only saw the value of NAR was I had to be affiliated with my local board for contracts and MLS access. And through the lawsuit, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the perception on the ground, right? Like, we can argue till the cows come home, but it was literally like, I got my forms from there, so I got to be a board member and I got to get access to the MLS through them. And my broker dictated it because they had a contract with the local board for access to those services. And through the DOJ and outside forces, those value adds that were really front and center are no longer needed, right? Or no longer dictated, if you will, because the major big box brokerage firms have basically said, we're not going to dictate, you have to be a NAR affiliate. So with that, that's the story that's being told. And I think our local boards have, and the state boards and the national board have a uphill journey to articulate value back to what you brought up, Shannon, which I think is 100% right, is a member-owned and operated affiliation. And I think the piece of the matter is that you hear CEO this, president that, and the perception is that these entities are not owned and operated as for the board member, or sorry, for the members. Like in NVAR, for most that you need to know that are in this area, we come from Northern Virginia, is that like the NVAR is not a for-profit entity. It's designated, I forget what's like a 501c something, but it's not a 501c3. But basically, all the proceeds have to be spent. They can keep a certain amount in reserves. The rest of the profit that's generated from member dues have to be poured back into member services or member products or member events. So they have to spend the money back to the members, and they have a board approval process on the expenses. So I think like the great part about this conversation was like, what is NAR providing? Because I think it's a huge question inside of the real estate industry. And I'm defining this because I think the only way you fix it is to find reality and then chart a path forward. And what I've shared with Ryan as the CEO for NVAR is that you've got to get people more engaged. And it's not going to come from another board member. It's not going to come from a staff member. It's not going to come from like the person doing one or two deals. You've got to get the people that are doing a ton of business, that are running big brokerages, that have legitimacy in the industry, and showing up and saying like I can't afford, nor should I trust that someone else is just going to do this on my behalf, but you have to actually engage. And I think part of the change inside of NAR is going to be like, what does NAR become in the future? Which is why I asked that question. Mm-hmm. And what do they come in the future is also going to be dictated by the members that actually choose to engage. Because if the members choose not to engage, board effectually goes to the NAR goes to effectively nothing and has no impact. And what's challenging for that with me is that then you have nobody at a national level lobbying for real estate rights. And the moment you allow that narrative to go somewhere else, someone's going to fill that lobbying seat. And then all of a sudden you're going to see changes that are actually not beneficial to your business, not beneficial to your homeowner rights. And then you see a whole different type of legislation go through the House and Senate, which now you don't have a voice for. So I think this is one of those situations where I say you might not be happy about what's happened in the past, but be educated about what has occurred up to today, and then actually engage and show up so that you have a voice, because you can't complain about what you didn't engage in. And that's my take on how you should be locally engaged, is that if you're not participating, I don't want to hear your opinion. But that's a different way you look at it.
Well, it's interesting. I would say something that comes up immediately in my mind is the difference between NAR, the state associations, and the local associations, right? We are all providing something different. And the most engagement is with the local association. And when you mentioned, the forms or the MLS access was the benefit of being a member. And, if the MLS isn't doing what we want it to, then why should we be a member? What I would say, though, is to someone, I'd say, is that tool valuable to you? Is having access to standard forms that are provided that can be used for your client's unique situation, is that valuable to you? Is it valuable when you are presenting? If you're on the listing side, you're presenting that offer. You've been able to review what those forms look like ahead of time, right? Same thing with on the buyer side or even rentals. I'd say, is that a value? And then I would say on the MLSs, there is a lot of noise out there about whether or not you have to be a Realtor member to join the MLS. Every MLS is different. Some are Realtor owned, some are not. There was no requirement nationwide to be a member. There might have been a pricing structure difference, but it wasn't a requirement by NAR, right? Brokers, the same thing. Brokers are going to say, we want membership. We want to be a member because all of these benefits that are provided, even if there's nothing outside of the basics, right? Like the members that are checking the box. Was what you got for checking the box valuable to you? And if not, then how are you going to have a voice to make it valuable?
So those are thoughtful questions that ponder consideration, right? And if we understand that the biggest challenge, like you referenced, is agents is wondering, how do they tell their story? How does NAR tell their story? What can you share with our audience that says, yes, we're trying to tell our story better. However, here's also what we're doing. Give us a little teaser. What's in that, Joe calls it the future, and I'm going to say it in the more future now type of changes that we can expect or hear from NAR?
Well, the programs that are across the board are being reviewed and enhanced. There's nothing specific that I would say, that I could say, oh, this big reveal, we're going to be doing this differently.
Oh, it was worth a shot.
I know, right? But what I can say is we're going to do what we've been doing better. And we're going to have more member engagement because we're communicating better. Serving the members that we have is very important. And that is something that I can say for sure that we're going to be doing better.
So if one of our audience members has raised their hand and says, darn it, I'm moved by this, I want to get involved.
Yes.
What do they do?
So the first thing that I would suggest is that they go to their local association and look at the committees that are in the association. What are they interested in? If they want to be involved at the national level, come to our conference, come to NXT in Boston in November. That is the annual conference for NAR, and there is education, small sessions, big sessions, general sessions. There are booths where staff are showcasing our programs, so they can come and talk to us. They can be right there. They can attend committee meetings and hear what the committees are doing. And some committees have additional platforms. One of my programs is the Commitment to Excellence program. And we have committee members that support that program in a formal setting through NAR, but we also have ambassadors. So we have members who are advocates that are out there helping us. That's a way to get involved. So coming to the committees and seeing what the programs are, there are ways.
So what board should we sign Joe up for?
Oh, what committee?
Yeah.
I'll give you the list of
Joe
my
would be
committees.
a great committee chair.
I would love for Joe to be on one of my committees.
You can send it over to me. I signed up for NVAR's YPN and public policy. So I'm happy to sit on one of the committees for NAR. By all means, send it over to me. I'm happy to be at a person on the committee. Sometimes you're not going to be able to control what I have to say on it, but I'm committed to the fact that I think NVAR, NAR, and VAR are highly impactful for our industries, especially for the fact that there is a voice. And I believe that the people that are most impacted by not having a voice need to show up and actually engage, and to start thinking about the board as something that's actually valuable to them, as opposed to something as a time suck that people that are not in production spend time as a country club. And I think that's the fundamental change that needs to happen at every one of our board levels.
I would love that. I would love to hear how can we make it better, not how can we disintermediate it, right? Not how can we leave it. Mm-hmm. How can we make it better?
Hey, it's just like politics, right? If you don't vote, you can't complain. And if you're complaining about the board and you don't engage, you don't get a vote. Well, listen, Shannon, I appreciate you joining us today. For everybody listening, I know we were a little longer today, but I thought this was a great subject. Joe and I are passionate about this. We want to get the message out there that you've members, you have rights, and you have a voice of one of our own, right? Working with NAR now. So Shannon,
yes, thanks
for joining us.
Well, thank you. And they can reach right out to me directly if they need to. I'm happy to hear from them.
Thank you, Shannon. And for those who are listening, please give us a like, follow our podcast. It comes out every week on Wednesdays. Appreciate you tuning in today. And until next week, from Joe and Dave on Entrepreneurial Impact.